Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the APALA Virtual Nominations Orientation. We're so excited to be hosting this event, and we wanted to just give you a run through of the different positions as well as executive board makeup and the process. And then we're happy to take any questions you might have. So first thing is that we're so glad you're here. Thank you for being APALA members and potential candidates. Please feel free to keep your cameras off, stay on mute. And if you want to speak, you can raise your hand using the Zoom feature, or you can share in the chat box and we'll call on you. And we'll take questions at the end, but feel free to drop them in the chat box if you have any. So first, we want to thank you for being a member. Very briefly here, APALA is a nonprofit organization dedicated to enhancing leadership opportunities through informed dialogue that addresses the needs of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander library workers and those who serve these communities. And if you are inclined, please feel free to share in the chat box where you're coming from, who you are, and we look forward to seeing that shortly. So for today's agenda, a really brief overview and introductions to the nominating process, sharing time and Q&A, if there are any. And then we encourage you to learn more about APALA through the apalaweb.org as part of being familiar with the organization. Now, this is the current APALA Executive Board for 2022 to 2023. And my name is Ray Pun. I'm the past president and the chair of the APALA Nominating Committee. So all these folks usually meet on a monthly basis, and there's a lot of remote and offline work that we all do in terms of decision making and discussions of issues impacting APALA and its members. And now, since I introduced myself, I am going to pass it over to Janet.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janet Clarke from Stony Brook University, and I'm a member of the nominations committee and also past president of APALA.
Great, thanks, Janet. Ben?
Yes, hi, I'm Ben Basco, and I'm also a member of the nominating committee. I was APALA's past president and executive director for 7 years.
Thanks, Ben. So all of us also have served in different executive board roles, and we can offer any our perspectives and experiences as well. So now the next section is I'll pass it over to Ben.
Okay, so basically we are talking about the constitution bylaws on elections. So here we are about just basically letting you know that, the nomination committee consists of always the past presidents, and we nominate annually for the vice president, president-elect, secretary, treasurer, as well as 2 members at large of the executive board. The immediate past president will serve as the chair of the committee, with 2 members to be appointed by the president. And in this case, Ray was the one who appointed me and Janet by the time of the midwinter. And then, of course, if the past president cannot serve, the president appoint another chair. We go by election to the entire membership, coordinated by the nominating committee. And the person who receives the most number of votes shall be, take each office, and that begins on January 1st of the election year. Proceedings and recall of the president or any of the officers may be originated by a petition of 20% of the membership and a special meeting called to hear arguments of the parties concerned. That hasn't been done, so it's a good thing. A summary transcript of the recordings will be sent to every member with a secret ballot. And then, as a rule, we can recall takes place if 2/3 of the current paid membership approve the ballot. And then, of course, the executive board, Article 5, consists of the president, the vice president, secretary, treasurer, the 4 members at large, the past president, and the executive director, which is serving as an ex officio. As in terms of management, the board shall serve as the board for the organization as a decision-making body. It can act for the association in the administration of policies and programs, and it shall report on its activities not later than the next meeting of the association. And of course, the duties in terms of each officers of the executive board are set forth by the bylaws. And in terms of the quorum, it's the majority that constitutes a quorum in the executive board meetings.
Thanks. And I did have a question here about ex officio. If you can give from your experience as executive director, what does that entail? Being ex officio.
Okay, ex officio is the person pretty much can help in terms of the discussion, in terms of clarifying questions, in terms of some of the policies, previous policies. The ex officio is the one who pretty much has a lot of experience in terms of administration, in terms of being on the board. And so the ex officio cannot vote, but can only provide input, provide guidance to the current executive board.
Great, thanks for that.
And then so the upcoming dates and deadlines, of course, we already had the open call for candidates and then statements. And today being the virtual nomination orientation. So anybody interested in knowing, all the roles are free to join us. By the end of January next year would be the end of the nominations, and between February 7th and March 3rd would be the election. And then we would notify everybody the result on March 6th.
Okay, so these are the roles that are open for this election period. It's the vice president who will serve a 3-year term, because they will serve as vice president, and then next year will be president, and then the year after that it'll be immediate past president. And then one secretary, which is a 2-year term. These all start in July 2023. And so this secretary will serve until 2025. And then we have 2 member-at-large positions, starts in July 23 and ends in 2025. So let's see. So altogether, there are 10 members that make up the executive board. It's the president, president-elect, which is the vice president, and immediate past president, treasurer, secretary, and 4 members at large altogether at executive board. And most of these roles have timelines in the APALA manual. And so this is what it looks like. Next slide. This is what it looks like in terms of an org chart. The president, executive, and executive director are the presiding, heads, and then we have these other members, past president, VP, secretary, treasurer, and 4 members at large.
Great, thanks, Janet. So now we're going to move on to the actual positions and pulling in from the bylaws and constitution and the description. So first we have the vice president, president, and immediate past president. So it's a 3-year term. The vice president and president-elect shall be performing the duties of the president during their absence, and shall fill in the office of president should it become vacant before the next election. The vice president has a role in terms of working closely with the president and the executive director, and supporting the president's purpose, vision of APALA, chairing or being the EB liaison, the executive board liaison to the program planning committee, helping with the annual program of APALA, and also including the ALA Emerging Leaders Program in terms of leading the group, if there is one. So that is the vice president's duty. And as far as the president, this is a very visible and very important role, presiding all meetings of APALA, as Janet mentioned, and being the ex officio members of all committees. So providing input as needed, with the exception of the nomination committee, and being empowered to fill all vacancies by the appointment in consultation with the executive board. So the appointment process, as you may have seen for the committees, usually comes out in July, and so the president, starts in July, the appointments, but then the president, as the vice president, would start the appointment process in the spring prior to being president. And it's everything listed here in terms of managing and communicating and coordinating activities of APALA, working closely with the treasurer on financial accounts of APALA, alongside with the executive director, exercising authority to appropriate funds and control expenses, really present the annual budget and report to the general meeting as well as the executive board, and being that representative for APALA, whether that's through ALA or through JCLC or any other groups, and then appoint chairs and members of APALA committees and representatives of APALA accordingly with different groups. So for the immediate past president, after the presidential term, serves as a consultant and resource person to the president and vice president in matters appropriate to their office, and served in the nominations committee and a member of any other committee as ex officio as appointed by the president. Ben?
So for secretary, this is a 2-year term starting in July 2023 that ends in June 2025. And the roles of the secretary pretty much are listed. You prepare the agenda and notify the members of the executive committee and general members of the forthcoming meetings 15 days prior to the meeting. And then prepare all the correspondence of APALA, correspond in consultation with the president, maintains files of the current year. And the secretary also maintains all the list of members and volunteers for the various functions of APALA, and then make sure that the minutes of the executive meeting committee and the general meetings are maintained properly. And as always, perform all duties incidental to the office of the general secretary, and as such, other duties assigned by the executive board. Now, in the absence of the president and the vice president, the general secretary will preside over the executive board, and in coordination with the chair of membership committee, shall maintain the current membership list of paid and non-paid members. So that will be the contact person to go to find out that. Next. Member at large. So because it's a 2 position, we have 4, but 2 rotates every 2 years, and so or every other year. And so this one is for 2023, 2025, and then the member of large performs all the duties assigned to him or her by the executive board and aid the executive board in the execution of duties. And of course, as member of the executive, as a member at large, you liaise or co-chair or coach or chair one of the 2 standing committees. And that could be from any, depending on the assignment given to you. Next.
Okay, so this is just FYI because the treasurer is not running this year, but it's one position, of course, and in July 2024, this position will become available. And the treasurer will maintain an accurate accounting of the receipts and disbursements and make semi-annual status report and a final report to the executive board, and they will make disbursements. So they will work closely with the APALA president and executive director. They will be, depositing the monies in the name of APALA and have the authority to handle financial matters that are 300 or less, and if it's anything above 300, it will require the signature of the executive director. And let's see. And the executive director is a 3-year term. And again, it's not up right now, but just FYI. And they will act as the chief administrative officer of APALA and maintain APALA's official records. They assist the president of APALA and other elected and appointed officials of APALA in carrying out their responsibilities. And the executive director will sign all contracts and legal documents as a co-signatory with the president. And they also serve as a liaison officer with ALA, its offices and affiliates, and with other organizations. And they also oversee the bank accounts with the treasurer, as I just mentioned. And they will perform other duties as required by the president or the executive board. And they will also provide members with information as requested by the president or the executive board.
Great, thanks, Janet. So in the next slide here, this is a general expectations of the board. So in essence, we are a membership-driven work. It's all volunteer. All of these positions are all committed to supporting APALA. And we really want to thank you all for your time and commitment over these years, serving in various roles and in leadership positions within APALA. The expectations include attending and participating in all executive board meetings as well as membership meetings. It's usually about 2 to 5 hours a month for the as an executive board member, 1 hour for the executive board meeting, and 1 hour minimum for offline work. And so there's also, if possible, to attend the ALA annual conference in June, where the APALA President's Program is usually held, and Live Learn X, which is in January, to be in support of other activities happening that APALA endorses or sponsors. One of the most important part is being responsive to emails, votes within specific proposals or urgent requests, or getting feedback or input, whether that's something from the president, treasurer, executive director being sent out to the executive board listserv. So that's part of the 1 hour minimum for offline work. And as executive board member, you're responsible for the committees and task force that you are assigned or appointed to. So it's very important to share the information and support the workload across so that it's being shared equally among all those who are participating in this volunteer work. And engage in growing APALA and serve as an APALA champion in recruitment and retention of APALA members and promotion of APALA in the field. So it's so important that as executive board members, you advocate for APALA in different roles in terms of maybe at a conference or in sessions, and really just encourage non-members or LIS students to consider joining APALA. And it's always a great way to bring in new folks into our association. And for those who might be wondering, well, what sort of training or support is provided for executive board member? If elected, there's usually an orientation around July for all new and current serving board members to serve in. There's also check-ins, as I mentioned, with the meetings that's held monthly with the executive board. And there's possibly opportunities for trainings, facilitations, and so forth, which is all connected to the president's plan as well as in consultation with the board. So upcoming dates and deadlines. So Ven had shared something earlier. So this is just a really reminder of the general timelines that we have so that you can see. And then there's a question here, why run and serve APALA? So first, you want to support APALA to help grow and build its direction together in a collective way, create the vision collaboratively, and really help expand its efforts, whether it is identifying opportunities to engage with AAPI communities and or recruiting AAPI library workers. It's such a team effort, right? No one individual can do this work alone. It's also an opportunity to develop leadership experiences in leading teams and committees and making financial decisions. So it ultimately looks great to have financial and fiscal responsibility for your CV or resume. And for me, it's really been an opportunity to think about expanding the connections and networking opportunities you have with all the folks serving and leading APALA. It's an opportunity to develop professional and personal contacts over time, mentors, mentees, and really great collaborators for future projects. And if you decide not to run this year, consider running in the future and serving as a co-chair or chair for an APALA committee. The call for volunteers will happen sometime in spring of 2023. Now we're going to just spend a couple of moments here, minutes, just to talk about sharing time with past and current executive board members. These are just some of the questions we have. What have you learned or gained in your role that benefited your position and or career? How do you justify your service work with APALA to your employer? What's one memorable experience you'd like to share? So we're gonna keep this pretty open. So if Janet or Van, if you want to just answer any of these questions, please feel free.
I'll start. I do get approval from my dean where I work for my service to APALA when I'm serving, and it's very easy to justify because my library has a commitment to DEI, increasing DEI experiences and service. And so that's an easy one, but they also, it's not just because it checks off a list, they really believe in the work that APALA does and supports APALA. So that's been a really good support from my organization.
Thanks, Janet. Ben?
Let's see. What have you learned or gained in your role that benefits your position? Being past president and also being chair of committees, several committees. I was the treasurer as well. And then being the executive director for 7 years, really help you with leadership, responsibilities, how to take care of that kind of stuff. And so you can bring that to your own institution, what you've learned in it's different with work, but there are similarities that you can, that you can translate or you can transfer to your institution. And so, that's one. And how you justify your service work with APALA to your employer. There is no written rule as far as, why do you have to serve APALA or any other institution, but that really would work well in terms of promotion or tenure, because serving in your work, there's always that component of in my annual accomplished AAPD position description that there is that 5% that is service to the profession, and so serving as an officer actually helps you in terms of there's a checkbox. Have you been doing all these things? And so that really helped. And one of memorable experience, actually, they become your family. That's one thing. And members of the APALA, they become your second family. And especially if you see each other at ALA or any other conference, you kind of sort of they were your long lost brother or sister that you want to hook up when you go to those conferences. And so it's different with when you're seeing them in person, but of course you can always connect with them through the social media, but the in-person connection is actually there, and that's something you look forward to, something that you forget about your work when you're in a conference and seeing all this your long lost family in APALA members. So
Ray, can I add a few more things? So another thing to remember is that this is a national organization. So that's also good for participation at a national level. And because APALA is kind of a small organization, it's much more intimate, and you can really expand your networks really quickly and widely. And I also love working with like-minded APALA members, because we all have the same goal of increasing professional opportunities for Asian Pacific American librarians and library folks. And it's just really wonderful to have that professional home. But also, it's really an experience working with people from all around the country, and great teamwork. learning about teamwork and, shared responsibilities, and just, using each other's, working with your own strengths that you bring to the committees or work that we do. So all around, really, I have nothing bad to say about APALA. I do have some of my most memorable experiences are meeting up with APALA folks or working with them, seeing them in person after a year's worth of working virtually, and seeing them in person at conferences. They're really great.
Thanks, Sven and Janet, for sharing. I totally agree. I think such an opportunity to develop those really great networking relationships. So I will share that I met Janet in 2013. I was just a new APALA member, and then it was just so great hearing her experience serving on the board and being more involved in APALA. And then we really stayed in touch, and I credit Janet for like giving me so much advice and suggestions in terms of career. So it kind of connects to number 2, which is about justifying your service work. So Janet actually shared with me that it's like she was saying earlier, if you're able to tally up the hours that you were committed to APALA, that's another way to get that give your employer perspective, right? How much time you're spending, and that definitely helps with that. So it was a great tip. And with Ven, I met Ven a while ago too. I remember going to Orlando for a conference in 2016, and he's at University of Central Florida, and then he drove all the way down to see me, and we had lunch with other folks. So then it was just a great way to connect locally as well. And he had said at the time, he's like, "Oh, I'll see you running for president." And I kind of paused, just like I did when Janet, suggested that too. But then here I am, I'm immediate past president. So it kind of like goes in circles when you have folks encouraging you, right, and being so supportive. So I really thank them both for being such great mentors and leaders. And so, so those are some of my memorable experiences I like to share. And in terms of the role and what I've benefited from or gained from, aside from, I mentioned the connections and networking, I think I really learned a lot about the governance structure. So if you are particularly in maybe an academic setting that's really focused on decision-making process, where it's like Robert's Rule of Order, which is what APALA uses as well, you become very familiar if you're serving on the executive board. And so that helps with that. And you can use that in your current workplace as well as in other types of organization or association when it comes to decision-making. And I even think maybe for public libraries too, in terms of board meetings, right? How it's like run and so forth. So you get that experience through APALA. And so another area is like financial responsibility and learning about different diversifying revenue streams, and also how to allocate and spend funds fiscally and responsibly. So this was a great way to ensure that we have a healthy financial situation. So going forward to support APALA. So that's something I've really developed over time. And so I think I'm going to just pause here to see if Ben or Janet, there's anything else you want to add?
Yeah, there's one thing I just want to add. Depending on in academic libraries, you go for promotion or tenure. And so one of the things when I was going for, I think for an award, I believe, or even I can't remember if I asked Janet, but I know when there was an Excellence in Librarianship Award that I applied for. And Janet is a good friend, a colleague, and she's been a APALA president. And so I have to ask her to provide that letter of support from her. And so, I was lucky enough that I got the award. And so all these connections, it doesn't necessarily have to be, your coworker. I mean, it's good to build this connection, as Ray said. These are your network of people who will help you in your career in the long run. And of course, I have to tell you something different. When I attended IFLA in Malaysia, because of some scheduling conflict with the airline. So my connecting flight from Korea to Kuala Lumpur, I was stuck in Malaysia in Korea for a long time, and it was actually Ray who was actually who provided me with that. There was that at the meeting, and so he had his phone on, and then basically focusing on and making me actually listen to what the meeting is all about. And he had to hold his camera, so I'll be able to see what's going on at that time. And so, yeah, these are things that eventually one day you'll go back and say, oh yeah, these are my connections, these are my friends, and I that's just a good people to be with. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. I totally forgot about that, but that's I remember now. I'm like remembering a little bit in that meeting. Yeah, just two other things, and then we'll move on to the next slide here. One great opportunity that I am really thankful for APALA is that being part of a community that supported this work that I've been sort of thinking about for a while, and working with several other APALA members, and we were able to get an IMLS grant, the first one for APALA, right? Like supporting 100+ AAPI library workers in developing leadership, understanding the barriers and what opportunities are out there. And so we were able to bring many people to, ALA annual conference, this project called Path to Leadership with CALA, the Chinese American Librarians Association. So it was just like really, really great opportunity to get a grant, a federal grant, and then work through it together with such important folks and dedicated folks. And one other thing that I had wanted to share is that it's if there are any questions that you might have, or any those who are listening or watching the recording, you're welcome to reach out to any of us or any of the past presidents, as well as past executive board members. All of us are like here to give you advice, suggestions, feedback, or answer any questions that you might have about these roles, because we're all here to help each other and support this organization. So, right. So the next slide is just additional resources. As we went through earlier, the positions are listed in the Constitution and Bylaw. And then there is the nominations link, which is due at the end of January of next year. So we really encourage you all to just spend some time thinking about it and put your name in the hat if you're interested. We'd like to really have you all be part of APALA in the executive board. And so thank you for attending today's session, and get in touch with us. You can email us at nominating@apalaweb.org. And if you have any questions in terms of what we discussed, feel free to put in the chat box or unmute. And we're happy to answer them right now.
My name is Jennifer from Kansas Public Library. I'm so sorry I was late for the beginning of this. But I was wondering, I did ask a question when I registered for this, was what kind of support is there for newcomers who want to, be nominated or get nominated, and then are fortunate to move on to the next round as they get elected for, say, the member at large position? Like, what support is there for those that are new?
Thanks, Jennifer. I think I heard your question, but just to let you know, I think your mic is a little muffled. So I'll just repeat the question, which is what support are there for those who are elected to the APALA Executive Board? So you're right. This is something we just reviewed really briefly, which is that once you are elected, there is a board orientation led by the president, and it's about the process, the decision-making, the proposal votes, and how things kind of work in terms of communication. And then there's also potentially opportunities for skill training, such as facilitation and other team building stuff that could happen in consultation with the board. So I hope that gives you some ideas, and also monthly check-ins with the executive board, as well as chatting with the president, being someone who can provide support and guidance. Right.
Yeah, there is a question. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Now there is a question from Neil about there's if they are required to attend a couple of conferences, are there funds available? Unfortunately, we do not, but we do have the scholarship. I'm not sure if it's open to executive board members, but we do provide a travel scholarship every conference for $500. And so that's one thing that you can apply. And also there are other scholarships as well that ALA offers. And so, and that's something that, we can share with you, can help you, identify what those opportunities are.
Right. Thanks, Sven. And thanks, Janet, for reiterating that there is no funds we do not require, but we do expect executive board members to attend if possible. That is right. It's an expectation, but it's not a requirement. One of the things that Ben had shared is about the scholarship. There's also potentially opportunities to support members for instance, like maybe the ALA registration fees, like in consultation with the executive board and looking at the budget. So that's also things that are done within that executive board. So it's something that is just is a possibility to be discussed. So thanks for your question, Neil. Well, if it looks like there are no other, oh, there is one question here. Given that APALA serves such a large and diverse community, and I worry about my own abilities to make decisions on items that impact communities beyond my experiences as an East Asian woman. Yeah, thanks for that comment there. So I understand in terms of your point there. There is a diversity within the AAPI communities, as we all know. And so I think we are very mindful at APALA to think about those in different positions, whether that is also one's background, library type, region. We're really looking at all of these into consideration. And so we're really yeah, as Janet said, there's a diversity of APALA members, so you will have input from different perspectives. Janet, do you want to add anything else?
I was just typing that we usually are not in a position to make a decision by ourselves. It's a lot of teamwork, and by virtue of being on the executive board or being on a committee, there's usually a natural diversity of representations from different parts of library land. So that's also a really wonderful learning environment, I find, because, I'm very steeped in academic, but then I have this wonderful perspective from the public library or school library. So it informs, allows us to make an informed decision together.
Great, thank you, Janet, for that. I don't see any other questions or comments. I guess if that is all, then I will say that get in touch if you have questions. Feel free to reach out to us directly or the nominating@apalaweb.org email. And thank you so much for attending today's session, and we hope you found it really helpful. And we encourage you all to apply, and looking forward to seeing the applications. So I'm going to stop recording.